All right, today's aim is let's sketch graphs to represent situations. All right, so for this first part in lesson 8, interpreting and creating graphs, 8.1, which one doesn't belong? You're gonna do an activity on Google Classroom. So there really are no wrong answers. You just have to choose whether graph A, graph B, graph C, or graph D does not belong if it's unlike the other three. So you just have to pick one of them and then give a valid reason for why you believe it doesn't belong. One thing I do want to talk about that the textbook does not really talk about is that these all four are considered functions. So what does it mean for something to be a function? Well, to be a function, for every x value or input, there can only be one y value or output. So what does that mean? Well, if I'm going along the x-axis, I can see that for every x value, there's only one possible y value. In this case, all the y values are the same. So the inverse is not true, right? I have one y value and an infinite number of x values. So that's not how we determine functions. It only has to be for each x value, there needs to be a unique y value. So looking at this graph here, for every x value, I only see one y value. Right? And one of the ways that we test something as a function is called the vertical line test. And that tests if something is a function. So if you look at this, if I take my pencil, and right now my pencil represents a vertical line, you'll see that as I move across the graph like this, I'm only ever touching the graph once. So this is a function. Same with this graph. I'm only ever touching the graph one time. Same with this graph, and same with that graph. Let me give you an example of something that would not be a function. Let's say I draw a parabola, but I draw it sideways. If I try and take the vertical line test on this parabola, I can see that I've hit it in two different spots. In fact, there are several areas where this parabola fails the vertical line test. So this would not be a function. Let's see if there's any other examples we can think of. Let's do more of a squiggly function that's a little different than something maybe we've seen before. All right. So at the beginning, this is a function, passes the vertical line test. But once I get right here, and maybe it's a little bit hard to see with this, let me try something a little bit thinner. Once I get right here, we can see that I hit the function 2 times. Right here and right here, if I draw that vertical line, it hits my graph twice. So again, this is not a function. And you'll have a good real-world example of this later on in the lesson. But that's something I just wanted to go over. All 4 of these graphs up here, they represent functions. That's something they have in common. Your job for this do now is to tell me what they don't have in common. All right, that's all for 8.1.